Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 976 for October 30th, 2022. Coming up in a few minutes.
It's very unusual to build a new distillery, and it's the first time in hundreds of years here, and probably it might take a long period of time before we build again.
We have a couple of exclusives on this week's show. The old Bushmills Distillery is now really the old distillery because a second brand new distillery next to the old one has gone into production. It's so new that I was the first journalist Colum Egan has taken inside for a tour, something the distillery's owners in Mexico have yet to do. We'll also hear from Jane Bowie and Denny Potter on their plans for a new distillery in Springfield, Kentucky. The pair revealed their plans this week after leaving Maker's Mark several weeks ago, and you'll hear their first recorded interview since leaving Maker's in the news. I'll also have the What I'm Tasting This Week department, your voice, and on Behind the Label, we'll look at an unusual use for the Solera system. It's all ahead on this week's WhiskyCast.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast. People never forget the person who introduced them to Redbreast. And then those people go on to introduce others to Redbreast. And soon the flock has grown exponentially. It's like a pyramid scheme. Without any of the bad stuff, of course. Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
Gabriel Cardarella here with Dewar's Whiskey, inviting you to enjoy this episode of WhiskyCast with a glass of Dewar's, the most awarded blended Scotch whiskey in history.
Let's get started with the news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. Irish whiskey industry leaders have released a new report showing a 21% gain in Irish whiskey sales worldwide last year, while acknowledging that this year will not meet that standard. That's because Ukraine and Russia accounted for 7% of exports last year, and neither country is receiving much in the way of imports because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. The Irish Whiskey Association presented its report at receptions for the European Parliament in Brussels Wednesday and the UK House of Commons in London on Thursday. Irish Whiskey Association Executive Director William Lavelle says leaders in those cities control the trade policies that directly affect Irish whiskey exports.
96% of what we sell is in export markets. So we need supportive international trade policy. We need supportive governments who get trade policy and get the importance of exports. And tonight gives us an opportunity to talk about those issues with our key stakeholders. Not just the opportunities that are out there, but the challenges we're facing. We had a great night in Brussels last night, and looking forward to another good night in the House of Commons tonight.
Give me a sense of some of the headwinds that you're facing.
Okay, so as I say, supply chain issues are very significant. Not so much supply, but cost. Energy costs have, as I say, put up the price of glass bottles, the price of malts. But we're also facing problems, for example, in international shipping, not just in terms of the cost, but congestion at ports. So we're an island in Ireland. We need to get our whiskey into containers, onto ships around the world. We face port congestion issues in Dublin and Belfast, but at the other end, be it the United States, across Africa, China, Australia, our members are reporting really significant challenges in getting their goods off the ships, into port, and even logistical challenges. So in the US at the moment, it could be the potential of disruption to rail freight because of disputes. It could be the costs of logistics. All of these are causing challenges for our members. And they're happening at two levels. The supply chain costs are impacting the production, okay, and making production more expensive. But then, when you have your whiskey and you're taking it from your warehouse and you want to put it into bottles and get it to consumer, you're facing challenges there. A really good example would be that one of the main suppliers of glass bottles to the Irish industry, based in England, had a fire only 2 months ago, and that has impacted the supply of glass bottles to Irish whiskey companies, some of whom now cannot meet the increased demand for orders for this Christmas period. Because they have the liquid, they have the labels, they just don't have the glass bottles, okay? And even if they do have the glass bottles, we're hearing, as I say, much more delays in terms of getting goods from distillery to the shelf. All through that distribution chain, there's more delays. So look, we're in a good position as an industry, but we have to be very honest about all these challenges. And we think government have a role in helping us. So that's why, as I say, we have events like this that we can call out the challenges and have a really constructive engagement with government and to how working together we can overcome some of them.
On the other hand, though, tourism is back after the pandemic, at least almost all the way back, right?
Yeah, so summer was really, really good for our distillery. So anecdotally, speaking to some of our distilleries in Dublin, they're 80 to 100% of what their numbers would have been in summer 2019, okay? Across the year, I think we'll probably be at maybe 2/3 of what we were in pandemic, but I think that is exceeding our expectations. Don't forget, at the start of the year, we were still in a pandemic phase. So really robust recovery in tourism. Tourism is so important. It's not just about the cash flow. It is a great way of promoting Irish whiskey to our international visitors to the island of Ireland. As I have said, tourism is about us putting our authenticity on display. You know, you can come in. It's like buying a new car and looking into the hood and kicking the tires. You can come in. You can see the process of it being made.
The U.S. remains the single largest market for Irish whiskey sales, accounting for around 41% of all exports. Britain has its third prime minister in 3 months, as former Chancellor Rishi Sunak was elected as the ruling Conservative Party's leader this week to replace Liz Truss after just 7 weeks on the job. One of Sunak's first moves was to keep Jeremy Hunt on as Chancellor. Last week reported that Hunt planned to restore a tax hike on distilled spirits set for February as part of a U-turn to reverse tax cuts from the Truss era. Hunt is expected to address Parliament on his plans for fixing the British economy on November 17th. In other news, George T. Stagg is back this year. Buffalo Trace revealed its 2022 antique collection this week, and Stagg returns after taking a year off last year. That was because the barrels earmarked for last year's release did not meet quality standards. The rest of the lineup remains the same: the Thomas H. Handy Sazerac Rye, the Eagle Rare 17-year-old Bourbon, the William LaRue Weller Wheated Bourbon, and the 18-year-old Sazerac Rye. Meanwhile, Buffalo Trace is planning yet another expansion. The company received a $2 million package of tax credits and incentives from the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority this week for a planned maturation campus in Laurel County. The package was based on Buffalo Trace's plans to invest $200 million to build 20 new rick houses, which will hold around $300 million worth of whiskey. The authority's meeting this Thursday was noteworthy for another item on the agenda: a package of incentives for J&D Distilling Company. The J&D are Jane Bowie and Denny Potter, who left Maker's Mark several weeks ago for an until now secret project. Both joined me for their first interview since leaving Maker's after the authorities' meeting. I started by asking why they gave up safe and secure jobs at Maker's to start their own distillery.
That's a really good question that we still ask ourselves some days. We've been doing this, me for 16 years and Denny for, 25 years. And I think it's one of those, opportunities that people that love the industry and love the business always imagine. If I were to go start my own distillery, how would I do it and what would I do? And we've been friends for 15 years talking about this, casually, and the opportunity came for us to take the lead together, and our skill sets complement each other. And so we just thought, it's now or never. We don't want to be at the end of our careers looking back, wondering what if. So, yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Why Springfield?
Washington County's an, interesting area where it's close to where we live. We know the community. It's got great farmland. And it just, was when we looked at, there are a lot of great places to go build a distillery, and we had a lot of heart for Washington County. There isn't a distillery there. So, there was something exciting about, going somewhere that the community doesn't have a distillery. So, but there were a lot of things in favor for Washington County.
Right. Yeah. And it was shocking really when we started looking around and just understanding that they don't have a distillery there. Like, I mean, it's super surprising because obviously it's right next to Nelson County and Bardstown. It's right on the Bourbon Trail, you know. So if you're coming from, you know, Wild Turkey or Four Roses and heading to Maker's Mark, I mean, you literally drive right through Washington County. And yeah, I mean, it was just, and, you know, Jane and I also, you know, we didn't want to relocate personally. I mean, we love Bardstown. I've been in Bardstown for 20 years now. My kids graduated high school here. So it really was kind of an ideal situation for us. And then operationally, you know, there's a lot of good things about it too. Just, you know, the area we're going to be in, the access to utilities, you know, all these things that are important if you're going to legitimately run a distillery. So, you know, all those things combined, it's worked out great for us so far.
Well, I have to ask the tough question here. Looking at the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority data from the meeting where you got tax incentives approved, where are you guys going to come up with $30 million to build this thing?
Well, the good thing about it is, Mark, we already have it. So, you know, Jane and I would not, you know, our big thing going into this was trying to create a scenario where we maintained majority ownership and, you know, working with, you know, a bank that's been an incredible partner of ours, and also, you know, just some investors, you know, we've been able to come up and secure that money for the project. So it, you know, before we really wanted to do anything, you know, we needed to make sure that, you know, one, what did we think this thing was going to cost? And then two, is there a way for us to do this and not give up ownership rights? Because, you know, that's one of the things too, is, you know, for us to both have, you know, over 50% equity combined was a big deal, because operationally it allows us to keep, you know, some of that creative freedom and, you know, the decision making on that side that, you know, we think is important.
And really goes back to your first question, Mark. Why in the world would we leave? Right. Probably two of the best jobs in the whole industry. I mean, they are. Maker's Mark is an absolutely wonderful place to work. And that's why. So, you know, we wouldn't have jumped ship for probably any other scenario.
Do you have a site yet?
Yes, but that's all we'll say.
Yeah, we do. We have property.
So 2 years, then a few more years after that before you start releasing bourbon. What are you going to do in the meantime?
Build a distillery.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're so intimately involved in this project. I mean, you know, obviously we're working with a third-party team that's helping us design all of this, but, you know, we're the project managers, we're the interim engineers, you know, we're the process people. I mean, we knew we would be busy. We've been incredibly busy, and, you know, we don't even have a shovel in the ground yet. So, you know, I think that's going to take up the bulk of the time over the next 2 years. And then, you know, we're just going to figure some of the other things out as we go, because we have time to do that.
What we've kind of said to everyone is we don't know if we're sharing the right way or the wrong way, but for us, if someone like you wants to come along on the journey, we'll share as we have more information. But really our big picture has been get this distillery built, and that economic development hearing was like a huge first step because it made the project official. So a lot of the details and the plans, we don't have ironed out enough to probably really share at this point. It's just our eyes on get the site, start, you know, the civil work, get a shovel in the ground and get this thing built to go make the whiskey that we want to make.
What did you two learn from watching other distillery startups in Kentucky and around the U.S. that will help you with this project?
Good question. I mean, I think one, honestly, and we've already touched on it, is maintaining that majority equity. You know, I think it's, you know, for us to have kind of the experience, you know, I've been in the industry combined, we've been in the industry for over 40 years. I've been in for 25 plus. And it's being able to bring that expertise to the table, but also know that once we're up and running, we're still going to maintain that operational control. But lots of things. There have been so many startups, there have been so many builds. We've done so many, just personally, whether it was projects down at Crucian when I was down there, whether it was, expanding the Bernheim distillery in Kentucky.
Building a limestone cellar.
Yeah, it's fun. It just like throughout the years, just even with your own operations, like that, pretty much that expansion that we did at Bernheim was really like building a 10 million proof gallon distillery. It's an expansion because it's on an existing site. So, I think through a lot of that, and then also, a lot of the people, that we're friends with in the industry that have done this, we consider, the guys over at Wilderness Trail, Pat and Shane are the two smartest guys in the industry. Those guys are phenomenal, and they've got great business minds, and, they've been a great resource for us just from a friend standpoint of, how they were able to get up and get going and how they've been able to maintain their operation. And, and then obviously we've known so many people in the industry, whether it was, Dave Pickerel after he left Makers. You got Steve Nally, who's worked at a few distilleries. We're just lucky enough to be in an industry where, even though people might move around a little bit, those relationships are maintained, and it's extremely friendly. And people go way out of their way to help you out. Jane and I have seen that, just in the last few months.
I think what's super fascinating, because it is no one's asked us that, Mark, but it's something we actually talk about every day. Everybody's had a slightly different philosophy about what they care about, or, the build to achieve XYZ. I think what's been so shocking, especially for someone like me who's only worked at one distillery, Makers is a National Historic Landmark that so many things are grandfathered in, and you're not allowed to do, this or that or the other. And so designing an operation from scratch that is going to be completely new to the world, right? That has been having, for me, it's been really fun using my brain in a different way, because you're not working with an established operation that has a lot of historical significance, that you have to be super creative on how you go about things. So that's been, every day is kind of just, I keep saying, I feel like we're drinking out of a fire hydrant. That for me personally, Denny's been a lot of operations, but that's been, it's like, we don't have to do it this way, right? We can do whatever we want. And so getting to go see how other people have set up their operations, it's been really fun. And it's been a great education on what's been happening in the industry, because we've been heads down 100 miles an hour in Loretto for the last few years. So it's kind of stopping to go, oh, wow, look what's been happening out here. It's crazy.
By the way, don't read anything into the J&D Distilling name as a potential brand name for their new whiskey. Jane and Denny said they needed something to put on the incorporation papers. They'll decide on a brand name for their bourbon closer to release time several years from now. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. Whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
Time now for the WhiskyCast calendar of events presented by Catoctin Creek Distilling. Whiskey Fest New York is this Thursday night, along with Dave Broom leading a tasting and book signing for his new book, A Sense of Place, at the Brandy Library in Manhattan. Fred Minnick has one of his blind bourbon live tastings on November 10th at the Champions Club at Washington, D.C.'s National Park. McTeers has its next auction of rare whiskeys on the 11th in Glasgow, Scotland. I'll be in Fredericton, New Brunswick for the New Brunswick Spirits Festival from November 15th through the 19th. That same weekend is Whiskey Live Singapore, the Nottingham Whiskey Festival in England, Whiskies of the World in Seattle, and the Pasadena Whiskey Festival in Pasadena, California. Whiskey Live Beirut returns on December 1st through the 3rd, along with the debut of Whiskey Fest Las Vegas on December 2nd. If you're organizing a whiskey event, please let us know about it. We'll be glad to add it to our searchable calendar at whiskycast.com. It's brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling, makers of the Virginia Rye Whiskey. You'll find their Roundstone Rye at fine whiskey shops in 26 U.S. states, 3 continents, and online. Visit the new buyvirginiarye.com site for more details, and please drink responsibly.
Dewar's master blender Stephanie McLeod's innate curiosity, combined with her passion for whiskey maturation, cask finishing, and blending, has created some truly incredible expressions for Dewar's Scotch whiskey. It's also earned her 4 consecutive Master Blender of the Year titles at the International Whiskey Competition, making her the first person to achieve such an accolade. Her innovative spirit is the inspiration behind the ultra-premium Dewar's Double 32 Year, the highest-rated blended Scotch whiskey in the world with a score of 94.4. So whether you consider yourself a whiskey connoisseur or just want to find an exciting new whiskey experience, consider one of Stephanie's other masterful expressions, including Dewar's 15-year, Double 21-year, or Dewar's 8-year Mizunara cask finish, and discover just how rewarding curiosity can be. Enjoy responsibly.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Mortlock and the Classic Malts lineup. They've been distilling whiskey in the town of Bushmills since 1608, or so the legend goes, but the town has never seen anything like the new Bushmills Distillery. It's a 37 million euro state-of-the-art distillery to complement the existing distillery that dates back more than 150 years. The distillery is so new that the owners have yet to make the trip from Mexico to see it, so the only photo you'll see on our website is an exterior photo. But Master Distiller Colum Egan took me inside for a tour, the first time a journalist has been inside.
We haven't had an official opening. Our owner hasn't seen it.
So this is all completely brand new then?
Yeah, well, it's operational since for about 12 months, but just we haven't actually had any official opening yet. We were just really seeing with the pandemic, in the end of the pandemic, we just really were looking to see how we're going to finalise it. So I suppose we want to see it make it much more visitor friendly, and at the moment we just have production guys that are going in and around. We do own a piece of land out the front here. We own a Sharva house, so it's an area here that one of the early owners of Bushmills, that's his early residence. So and it's got some great stories to it. So it's a listed building that we have out the front. And it's got lovely gardens and an orchard. So I think ultimately we might try and get access and make it so accessible from that area all the way through. So you can see here we're having a grain intake. So I suppose one of the designs that we have, we didn't want to have any reversing, so again try to look at the whole safety side of things. So we've managed to be able so that all our truck deliveries just drive straight forward in, unload the grain and drive out, so there's no reversing as part of it. So again, when our wet grains, so after the mashing process, we're left with the wet grains. Again, the truck will drive straight through, drive underneath the hopper and drive off again. So again, some nice design, easy, clever, but we had to put a lot of thought into it to try and only have trucks going forward. It's a small little thing to say, but I think it's important just before we even set foot inside the distillery of the philosophy, I suppose, that we were using. So all of the knowledge that we gleaned, it's very unusual to build a new distillery, and it's the first time in hundreds of years here, and probably it might take a long period of time before we build again. So we wanted to use that knowledge in the best. And I suppose looking back, would we change anything? No, at this point in time I think we had such good foresight and a lot of time put in to, I suppose, perfect what we have here. So we'll walk through here.
And this is 5.5 million litres per year?
This is a 6.2, slightly bigger than the old one. And also, I suppose, again, tried to be a little bit innovative. We've made the first part of the process, so the malt intake, the mill and the lauter tun, they're actually capable of over 12 million. So we've put that design in already, just thinking of the future. So again, that's part of, I think, some of the design that we did spend 2 years in the design before we actually turned. Yeah, so and that always pays back. So more thought put in ahead. It's very difficult to change when the builders come in. So to get the design right in the first place, I think, is the crucial thing.
Is that a mash filter I see?
No, this is a mash tun. Oh, yeah, so that is, well, again, different scale. So everything is, you'll see, raised above the ground. Everything is easy clean. We have a great surface on the floor. So all things that, again, might be secondary in some places, but they're crucially important when in the running and the operations of a plant. So that large filter that you see, that's actually the wort cooler. Yeah, so yeah, but it's big, very big. We have our yeast. Again, we still bub our yeast in this distillery also. So bub the yeast here. Again, replicating as much as we can in the way that we've always done it at Bushmills. Again, nice clean lines. It's all about, as I keep saying, in the mashing and the fermentation, it's all about keeping the hygiene of the plant to give the yeast the best opportunity to do, I suppose, what they do best, and that is to produce alcohol for us. So you see here, this is the bottom of the mash tun, and the lauter tun, and wow, myriad of pipes. It looks, but again, this is the capacity to do 12 million litres of alcohol. So we have a turnaround time here of about 3.5 hours on the cycle here.
That's impressive with all the pipe works going in. Is this these steam pipes, or is this? So
they're all wort. So that's where the sugary liquid, the wort, comes out at the bottom of the lauter tun. And again, it's, I suppose, each time, this is the second lauter tun that we put in. So we put in a lauter tun in 2008 in the old distillery, in the new distillery here. So, and we try and keep up with technology. So this is really, I suppose, much more, the control here is much better. So you have much more pressure differentials, much better temperature control. So it's easier to manage the process and manage variations in the incoming malt supply as well. Again, the incoming variations are very slight, but any help that we can in the process itself by the equipment, makes the life of the distiller a little bit easier if we can get live information back on pressures and temperatures and flow rates at the appropriate time.
Is it okay if I take a picture of this?
Again, my only issue is my owner hasn't seen it yet. That's the problem. So nobody is taking a picture in here. I'd love to, but
okay.
I'm just nervous in that. Like, if he just come over, but he just has to be able to make it there. Again, a lot of thought. You can see here in the bottom is the bottom of the fermentation area. Very easy, so it's a great floor. The floor is actually chamfered off to the side, so into the drains. See the detail that we put into the whole wiring side of things. Again, everything very easy, accessible, all at waist height. So a gate for our engineers. You can see again the design so that we can get access to the pipework at all stages. And again, beautiful. I just think the down here you can see the beauty, I suppose, of the fermenters themselves. They really are impressive, and when you see them all in a line, all replicating, it's super. It's unusual to see down at this level, and when you go upstairs then I think you get that's the impressive layer. So I suppose that's the operations level where most people see, but to come down and have the same standard on the production level as you do at the operations level, I think that's a sign of really of a good place, in my opinion. So we kind of started, on the production side with the malt intake. Now we've just come into, I suppose, this would be or will be the entrance area. As you see, it's like a skeleton at the moment, but it's a great space that I'm really excited about, because we stand, Mark, again, very unusually. So we're down below, a level below the operations floor where. But you can see subtly into the still house. We can just see the tops of the fermenters, and then we can see just the lauter tun as well. So I just can't wait to have some kind of tasting or a bar in this area here, right in the heart of the distillery. And you actually just look around and you can see the entire process that's ongoing all around you. So again, this is one of the, I suppose, design features that I was very keen on. It's all really about the whiskey, no matter what, and we can't forget that, even though we're in a distillery. But it's all about, enjoying that nice drop of whatever it may be inside that glass, and to do it right in the heart of the distillery itself. I can't wait. I come down here sometimes and take a little glass myself just to get the experience. So we're just going to go up.
Going up. Doors closing.
Again, we even have a lift. What do you call it? Elevator? The stairs? Elevator. I thought we'd never get one of these, but it's super. It makes life easier. There's such a big building here as well.
Second floor.
So this
Doors
area,
opening.
they were just coming out to now. This was, again, part of the wow factor. So this is one of the places where we can see everything. So we can look down to our right and we can see the lovely red mill, and then into our water tanks that feeds into the lauter tun. And then straight in front of us we have the top of the washbacks, the fermenters. And again, just the angles that we have, the pipework that's coming off the top of the fermenters, just to have it replicate itself. And I think I like the lighting as well, so we have a nice blue light on top of the lauter tun, and the guys have got like this lilac light down in the fermenters. They play around with the lights, and then we can't take away really from the still house, and we just again begin to get some sneak previews of the copperwork and what the still house looks like itself, all from this spot. So from this kind of veranda area that you overlook the process, we walk towards the still house, and you just begin to see the stills, and it's just a wow. I think it was a brave move to put in the black, but it works very well with the copper, and then the nice stonework at the end. So views here, we can see right out to the sea here. And this is the little village, and you can see here in front of those trees. So that really is the old listed building, the old house that hopefully we'll look to see what, I suppose, the best use that we can make of it. So again, inside the still house, and I think really what it was important that we just try and have the stills and the condensers at this level, and we tried to all of the I suppose, equipment that we need to run the still house, we've managed to design it so that we put in it at an intermediate level beneath the stills. So again, very difficult to do for us, but you see again the nice replication. Really, I think the pipework and the guys, for sides, I must say, outdid themselves in the still house here. Again, you'll see the height of the roof, and again, we've actually put in an internal crane beam. So we've learned over time that in the current distillery, any time we need to take a still out of the still house, we need to take the roof off and bring a crane on site, drop the crane in and take the stills out that way. Whereas now this is all done internally and we don't need, so we know we have a crane beam. You can see the stills again are assembled so that they have all flanges. So the lie arms are separate from the shoulders and different from the main body of the still as well. So we can actually take the stills apart, put them in, and we put them down into our drop zone straight on the back of a truck. So again, some nice, clever ideas. Well, I like to think of anyway. So that was really, I suppose, it's a help. The guys were trying to make the right spirit. So if we can make sure that the equipment runs efficiently 24/7, you need to have it very well maintained. So to have it very well maintained, you have to have great access, and you have to. And that's what I suppose was one of the core principles of what we have here.
Makes it a lot easier for your successor 25 years from now to replace a still.
I would think so as well, yeah. When you can see the old distillery and just the small amount of space that we have, if we want to do anything in there, it's just cramped and difficult. Here we have the space and just the ease of access to it all, but it's important as well that we got the look and the feel to it right as well. So I do think it's spectacular looking, and we'll just drop down a level and we'll go down onto the operations floor, and you can kind of get a feel for when you're standing among the stills themselves, as we're standing above them here, almost looking down.
So you can operate this now with one person?
Yeah. So I suppose to get the equipment to run, you need to have, and run efficiently, you have to have a very deep understanding of how that equipment and the expectations that you have out of that equipment. And you have to have very reliable equipment as well. So you do need to invest in the right monitoring. But it's important to have people at the heart as well. So they're very highly trained, the distillers that run in here. So to be able to run this amount of plant and equipment, and especially in the still house, and to be able to replicate that great taste every time, it really is a very, very highly trained individuals that do that. And it's an ongoing process. So obviously as part of the fundamental design of the distillery itself, we try to make as many smart pieces of equipment as we possibly could, so that the machines would be able to send the information to the distillers themselves, and they're able to react to that. So you do need to have the sensors and the probes, and the pressure switches and temperature and flow meters, all really sending the right information at the right times, so to let the distillers make the right decisions at the right time. Yeah. So you'll see here again, I suppose we're very close now to the mill. It's a 6-roller mill, so we've again, the 6-roller we went with just to have a little bit more control over the size of the grist itself. So the grist is obviously when you get the barley seeds and you pass them between the two metal rollers, and to get the size of the husk, the flour and the middle, and to get that mix right. at every time, not just now and again, every time. And the 6-roller does allow you to add that little bit of consistency to your grist formation, which then really is, every lauter tun has its own grist makeup, so its own level of consistency of the, I suppose, as I say, the husk, the grain and the flour. So we have it perfected for this lauter tun. As you can see, it's a wonderful large vessel. It runs very well. It's a 3.5 hour cycle. So we put 14 tons of grist into this vessel, and as I say, every 3.5 hours we get a new batch coming from it. Or we can do.
Is this distillery shut down as well for faints rebalancing?
So we're actually going to start back up here again. So Robert's inside and just starting back up here again. Yeah. So it's a bit quieter in here today. And then you see the fermenters again. I like the look. I like the repeatability of the tops of the fermenters themselves and all of the pipework. Really, I think it goes very well. Yeah, so we have 9 fermenters, and again we bub the yeast very similar to the old distillery. We have a 50-hour fermentation cycle, again very similar. So it's all about replicating what we have to make sure that the taste doesn't change. And again, as we go into the operator, you can see really the full array of tools, I suppose, that we've given each of the distillers as they're making the whiskey. So we've a lot of cameras in each of the different areas as well, because we're looking at a delivery truck there now, so we're just keeping an eye on it. So again, the delivery driver comes, he'll offload. He'll put in all the information electronically in, so we're trying to cut down on any of the paperwork side as well. So again, all these subtle small things, but trying to be a little bit more sustainable as we go. So it's the driver that inputs all of the delivery numbers and the tonnages that the tonnages delivers and dates and things like that, and that goes on the system then. And once it's on the system, then we have it electronically, and we can track the grain then all the way through each stage of through the milling, through the mashing, through fermentation and into still house. Yeah. So, and again, you can see really all the screens here are replicating what's happening in reality. So we're just really tracking how the milling is doing, at what stage the lauter tun is at. We'll also look at fermentation temperatures, and every fermenter really should have a very similar temperature profile. And then into the still house, where the triple distillation, you'll see the same size stills, the same shape stills that replicate really the old distillery.
You mentioned in the old distillery that the stills were somewhat unbalanced between the 9 stills in there. Were you able to solve that problem with the new one?
Yeah, well, again, we solved that in the old distillery in that when we installed the 10 still. So we installed that 10 still back in 2007. But prior to that, it was a difficult still house to run. It took a lot of attention, and that 10 still in the old distillery really did free up and made it much more easier, much more balanced, in that the flow from first distillation, the second distillation, the third distillation was much smoother, and we didn't get a build up at any step. So what would have happened when we had 9 stills, we got a build up after the first and second distillations, and once those intermediate tanks, those storage tanks that we have, once they're full, then you'd have to stop distillation because you're putting anything more inside them until you took more of that faints from them. So we solved that in the old distillery, but obviously then building a new distillery, an opportunity to make sure that the same issues didn't arise. So we've got the the stills designed, we got the steam right. So steam, obviously, and how you heat the stills is a crucial, and have very close control over still flows, which means then you close control over your temperatures, and that really then has what your distilling rate is. So how much vapor are you getting off? So how much liquid are you getting from each distills? And that's important again to the whole taste profile of what you're trying to do. So every distillery again will have different flow rates and different rates of steam, and that's really fundamentally, I suppose, what a lot of the taste come from is in your still house.
So we're in the new still house now, and these stills are just gleaming in the sunlight that's coming in through those windows. 2 rows of 5, the shell and tube condensers all in the middle. A very elegant layout.
Yeah, again, we put a lot of thought into it. I just think it really does work. We got the lighting right. Again, having these wonderful, these massive windows out the front really lets all the light in, and every window frames a still on that front batch of 5, and the back batch of 5 here that we're looking at here. Again, we have the lighting just right on them as well, and I think Forsyths really took a lot of pride and passion into what they were doing, and I think it really shows through as well. So I think the building fits the stills, and then to have the lighting just right, I think it all works seamlessly together. So I think when you're building a distillery, it's such a big team effort. It's such a big job. So we had our local engineers here, Dorrans and Belfast. We had Keir Houston, who looked after, I suppose, the project itself. Paul Glacken here, who had oversight of the whole project, and Alex Thomas actually had a key role to play in it as well. So it's this great bunch of people that we have that really made all this happen. But when you do it out in paper and you try and plan it, you hope that it comes out and looks this good. So when it came out and looks this good, I pinch myself every time. Every time I come in, I just think so proud of what we've ended up here. So it looks unbelievable. It's one of the nicest looking still houses you're going to come across, but it's actually highly functional as well. So everything that we've done in here again has operational and maintenance and health and safety and sustainability. So all of those things that we cherish are fundamental to the design also. So to get all of those different elements put together and to come up with a final result that simply just works, it's great.
Thanks to Bushmills master distiller Colum Egan for the tour. It came as part of a press trip organized by the Irish Whisky Association and Tourism Ireland. And while we thank them for their support, we remind you that full editorial control over the content of this episode remains with WhiskyCast. That's WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Mortlach, whiskey's best-kept secret. Hidden away for decades in some of the world's most famous Scotch whiskies comes a single malt inspired by an original for a fortunate few. Discover the entire Mortlach lineup at malts.com. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit. Visited several distilleries on my tour of Ireland, including Powerscourt Distillery outside of Dublin. The distillery has just released its first mainstream blend for Cullen Falls, featuring some of its own 4-year-old whiskey. It's bottled at 43% ABV. The nose has notes of vanilla, apples, pears, cooked peaches, honey, butterscotch, and dried flowers. The taste is fruity and floral with subtle spices and a very complex mouthfeel. There's barley sugar maltiness, along with tree fruits, butterscotch, and honey. The finish is long, fruity, and floral with touches of malt and spice. It's a nice whiskey. I'm scoring the Fercullen Falls Irish whiskey a 92. Let's move on to the Fercullen 21-year-old 2022 vintage. This is a single malt matured in ex-bourbon casks using sourced whiskey and finished in a combination of PX and Oloroso sherry casks, then bottled at 46% ABV. The nose is malty with touches of figs, dates, brown sugar, honeydew melons, and mangoes. The taste is thick and syrupy with dry spices, figs, dates, honey, and cooked fruits, while the finish is very long and fruity with just a hint of spice. It is an outstanding whiskey. I'm scoring the Colum 21-year-old 2022 vintage a 95. And finally, I got a chance to taste the new Ardbeg duty-free release. Smoke Trails is finished in Manzanilla sherry casks and bottled at 46% ABV. The nose is peaty and phenolic with hints of creosote and iodine, complemented by heather, honey, and dried fruits. The taste starts off fruity and sweet at first, with a slow onset of peaty smokiness and touches of grilled fruits, honey, and heather. The finish is long with a sweet barbecue sauce smokiness. I'm scoring the Ardbeg Smoke Trails single malt a 93. This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Sagamore Spirit, a 100-time award-winning Maryland-style rye whiskey. With a determined focus to create the best rye whiskey imaginable, Sagamore's team of distillers crafts each spirit with a nod to both tradition and innovation. Find their signature, double oak, cask strength, or reserve series of ryes, as well as their line of premium rye whiskey canned cocktails at a retailer near you. Visit sagamorespirit.com/find-rye, and please drink responsibly.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast. Kentucky and Ireland have plenty in common. Two homes of horse racing. Bluegrass music is said to have Irish roots. Okay, it's not the longest list, but the Redbreast Kentucky Oak Edition only strengthens the bond. Finished in sustainably sourced Kentucky oak for a captivating nose and round taste. I see a triple crown in this thoroughbred's future. Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
Let's open up the inbox now for Your Voice, presented by Scarabus Isla Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. I saw something at my hotel in Belfast this week, the Grand Central Hotel, that I'd never seen before. An open bottle of Bushmills Red Bush at the breakfast buffet, with a sign encouraging guests to try some with their porridge. Now, I should note that I have seen whiskey and porridge before, but never an open bottle at a breakfast buffet where anyone could get to it. I tweeted a photo of the sign and bottle out, and boy did you guys respond. From Barry M. at Bar Mass on Twitter, I was in a B&B in Dingle nearly 3 decades ago, that offered a shot of Bailey's for the porridge. It was great. Connor Dempsey responded, "Welcome to civilization, Mark." Bill W. McCready added, "A feature at the Sleeve Donard Hotel in County Down, and well worth trying." From at Whiskey Girl 6, "Scottish posh hotels do. It would be Scotch, though. A good wake-me-up porridge and good sustenance for a damp, cold climate." And from Stephen Elliott, "No wonder Goldilocks trashed the Bear's house." It's a damn shame I'm not a porridge fan, or I would have tried some. If you have a question, suggestion, or anything else you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, you can always find me on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or just email me. The address is comments@whiskycast.com. Your Voice is presented by Scarabus, the Isla single malt from Hunter Lang & Company that celebrates all of Isla's natural gifts in one bottle. Only those who seek shall find Scarabus. Start your search at hunterlang.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. It's brought to you by Writer's Tears. You probably have heard of Solera-style maturation. It was first developed in Spanish sherry bodegas, where the winemakers top up a cask with sherry as it evaporates to keep the cask full. In the whiskey world, Soleras are most often used as a finishing technique, with a large vat that's topped up with whiskey as some is withdrawn from the bottom. The idea is that the vat is never emptied, so a small bit of the original whiskey always remains in the Solera vat. But the folks at Ardra Distillery in County Donegal, Ireland, have a different use for the Solera system, as James O'Doherty explains.
We've got the Solera, which is normally used to put barrels together at the end of the process. We've put that at the beginning of the process. So we've got 2 Solera vats, one for single malt, one for pot still. They're never fully empty, so there's always 25% of them full. They're 6,000 litres nominal, and that takes 6 batches at a time. And before it goes into cask, we take those. It'll be sitting in the tank, be recirced, mixed and matched together, so you get that kind of consistency from batch to batch. And then from the Soleras, it goes into the stainless steel tank where it'll get taken down to 64 to go into cask. So it's about ensuring consistency between between batches, but it's also about trying to convey the idea that in 100 years' time, some of the original spirit, will still be in the wood, certainly, but could still be in that piece in the bottom that's always there.
The whiskey eventually winds up in the distillery's sleeve league, the Silky Whiskies. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just use the contact form at whiskycast.com to get in touch with us. Behind the Label is brought to you by Writer's Tears.
Writer's Tears Copperpot, an 18th century style of premium Irish whiskey, blended from single pot still and single malt. Like yourself, it's one of life's treasured rarities, and what's rare is wonderful. Writer's Tears Copperpot.
That's all for this edition of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of our past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
Well, folks, we're nearing the end of another great episode of WhiskyCast, which means you're probably craving some whiskey. Head on over to Dewar's.com or your local retailer to discover what makes Dewar's the most awarded blended Scotch whiskey in the world.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever go out drinking with a peacock? Always the same. Few too many, tail feathers come out, drinks get knocked over, bartender's not happy, night's over before it started. All I'm saying is, don't be the peacock in your group.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2022, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.